old school V8. Welcome to what promises to be a fabulous episode of Gone But Not Forgotten on the Evo India channel, where we have all the generations of the Mercedes-Benz S-Class and we are going to be driving all of them. So out here we have the 116, the very first generation of the S-Class, where the S-Class line originated, the Sonda class, in 1972. Then we have the 126, the most popular, the best-selling S-Class ever. The 140, the Panzer wagon, that Dictator special, rectangular, crafted from a block of metal. The 220, this is very special. The reason is not because it marked a radical change from the 140, but this was the first S-Class to be assembled in India. The first S-Class that I actually drove, September of 2001. Remember it so clearly. The 221, also again assembled in India, magic body control. Then you have the W222, more advanced in terms of tech, features, all of these cars innovated in terms of safety. And the very latest, the 223, the one which now also has Drive Pilot. But which is your favorite generation of the S-Class? Let us know in the comments. And before much ado, the keys to the 116. I'm going to start driving the very first S-Class, a car that was launched before I was even born. What a privilege! Make sure, like, subscribe, share, and follow for more such content. Come on! This is peak 70s, the 116, the place that Sonda class, S-Class actually originated. All metal bumpers, all chrome. These little wipers for the headlamps. Oh man, this is unbelievable. It's a piece of rolling automotive sculpture where the S-Class line started off. And I'm going to drive it. This is the start of the legend, and I'm getting to drive it. You fire it up and it starts with this powerful as far as privileges go, this is next level. This car has got 6.5 lakh kilometers on the clock, and this is the 6.9 SEL. So it took the 6.3 liter engine from the Grand Mercedes, the Grosser Merc in the previous generation, and it was bored out to 6.9 liters on this car, V8 engine, M100, 500 Newton meters of torque. 500 Newton meters of torque before I was even born. Soft suspension, even you're coming out of that speed breaker. Yeah, it's also like in those old Hindi movies, na? You can do this with the steering. Day-night mirror. So innovations on the W116, the one that I'm driving. In 1978, it debuted ABS, the first passenger car to have ABS, developed obviously with Bosch, both based out of Stuttgart, so across the road from each other. The wider stance and integrated bumpers of the W116 was designed not only to look modern, but also accommodate safety requirements. Passive safety was a big focus, and the W116 had plenty of patents by the legendary Bella Marini, including crumple zones, a padded dashboard, and the fuel tank placed above the rear axle and not in the boot for better crash safety. And with every generation of the S-Class, they debuted new and new technologies, especially in terms of safety. This one is ostentatious. So those chrome bumpers, chrome all over, it screams money. And the 6.9 badge on the boot tells the world that that's a car not to be messed with. The strong boxy design with clear Germanic lines was penned by Friedrich Geiger, topped off by the iconic upright Mercedes grille and a large glass house for visibility. This car has been a Mercedes-Benz car right from day one. So this 6.5 lakh kilometers, all put by Mercedes, used for chauffeur duties. Now it's owned by the Mercedes-Benz Museum, the Heritage Collection. So always been a Mercedes car, first owner car. I should point out the Becker sound system. Now the Becker audio is the Burmester of today. That time Becker was top of the line. No airbags. Airbags came on the next generation. We're going to talk about that when we step into it. When you see soft rimmed steering wheel. Hey, it's got a sunroof, I think. This V8 engine, oof, so smooth, like Muska butter. Okay, well, let me tell you what SEL stands for. S, Sonderklasse. E for injection in German, fuel injection. In German, it's something, but E for fuel injection. It got the Bosch K Jetronic fuel injection, and L for long wheelbase. So that is the SEL, Sonderklasse, fuel injection, long wheelbase. 6.9, because 6.9 liter V8. Unlike today where 500 doesn't mean 5 liter V8, 6.9 denoted the engine. And this particular specs, the 6.9 SEL, they sold around 8,000 cars. Doesn't sound like much, but you got to remember that back then in the 70s, this cost twice as much as the entry-level S-Class. So extremely expensive. The 6.9 liter engine even had a motorsport derived dry sump oil lubrication system, unheard of in luxury sedans or any road cars at that time. This generation got hydro pneumatic suspension to give it ride comfort, and that was not only rare for the time, but it also offered Rolls-Royce levels of comfort. This knob here, they've asked us not to use this, but this is to lift the suspension. This is hydro pneumatic suspension, and it's even got a sign over here showing you when the suspension lifts. But this is what the S-Class had in the 70s. Plus, it is reliable. In general, the W116 was built like a tank and is still seen on African and Middle Eastern roads decades later. The handbrake, that's on the left, that foot-operated handbrake which Mercedes-Benz had for years. I think that's seat heating and cooling over here. So that's the W116 S-Class. And now we swap into the W126 S-Class. And the most successful S-Class ever. It is said that if the W116 invented the S-Class, the W126 perfected it. Noticeable differences, softer lines. Plastic bumpers, deformable bumpers, so if you bang something at 5 kmph, it will pop back into shape. It still retains these headlamp washers and the wiper, but more rounded lines and less ostentatious. In fact, a lot of customers removed the badging at the rear. Quiet luxury in the time before the term was even coined. So here we go, the W126, the second generation of the S-Class. This debuted the driver's side airbag right from launch. Then I think in the mid-80s, you could get a passenger side airbag. ABS was of course debuted in the 116. The W126 was also the first S-Class to use extensive high-strength steel for safety, and that also led to a shaving of 280 kilos over the W116. Then there were automatic seatbelt tensioners, traction control on later models, energy-absorbing steering column, and a redesigned crumple zone structure. This particular example that I'm driving, where the W116, 6.5 lakh kilometers, this one has got 484 kilometers. So practically delivery mileage, also owned by Mercedes. The company is part of the Heritage fleet. This one is the 560 SEL. Now 560, that stands for 5.5 liter V8 engine, M177, if I'm not mistaken. The immediate difference is it is just so much quieter and so much smoother. This engine, the M117 V8 engine, made 279 bhp. It had a top speed of 250 kilometers per hour. cool V8 engine, so smooth, get that roar from it. It moves also quite decently for something that's nearly as old as I am, and it always feels like there's power in reserve. The S-Class is always supposed to have been about stately progress, and here for sure. And when you go over these roads in Germany, you're not going to find bad roads anywhere. You go over these roads, it's got this gentle loping ride and not a squeak or rattle, not one. Maybe Mercedes-Benz, they really take care of their heritage fleet, or it was just built like a tank. Those were the days when engineers had like an unlimited budget to do whatever they wanted. That's why the generation change used to take like 10, 12 years, because it used to work so long, take forever to do it. But those cars also became forever cars, as befitting the S-Class, only top of the line stuff on this. So you get a Becker Mexico cassette player, which was top of the line in those days. Seat controls, those electric seat controls on the door, yeah, it's out here. This is where it came from. Everything that you see on Mercs today came down from the S-Class. You could say that they were grand tourers in Armani suits, and the tank-like build quality defined the drive. This was Bruno Sacco's masterpiece, the great designer who only recently passed away. So they focused a lot on the aerodynamics. Since then, Mercedes has been banging on that aerodynamic drum, and for good reason at that. Plastic bumpers and flush-fitting glass were advanced aerodynamics for the time, and that resulted in a coefficient of drag of 0.36. This also has a sunroof somewhere, I think here. Yeah, it's got a sunroof. This is classic 1980s opulence. Plush velour or leather, thick carpets, Zebrano wood trim. Some versions even had digitally adjustable orthopedic seats, rear seat climate control, and Tempomat, which was an early version of cruise control. And this driving position, so typical of Mercedes. You see this long bonnet with the three-pointed star like a gun sight right at the end of the bonnet. You sit high up. The seats, actually the 116 seats were like larger, but great seats. Less woolly steering, more direct, more responsive. Still not a sports car, but for its time, the best car in the world.
Get it live, who can paint that picture? Ain't no way we losing inches, climb them fences, get bruised up, got stitches.
A head of state, a dictator, presidents, our president, the Indian president, all of them had an S-Class, and this was the S-Class, the W140, the third generation of the S-Class, and an absolute masterpiece in terms of design. Design that really radiates, presents strength, power, influence, you name it. Massive tank-like build, tank-like design, that classic rectangular Mercedes look, which of course went to all the other cars. The W124, the look came from here. And this, to look at, my God, all those movies that you watch about dictators, despots, everything, all have a W124 S-Class. And there's a reason for it. This never broke down. Bulletproof, they had a lot of bulletproof variants of this. It also had double glazed windows that debuted on this, so silent on the inside. It cut you out from the great unwashed. Inside this, you were cocooned from the world. To me, the S-Class, the ultimate S-Class, the collector's S-Class, it has to be this. Of course, first generation, second generation, even more collector, but this is the S-Class as we know it. Time now to drive it. Okay, the Panzer wagon. It redefined what a big Benz looked like, felt like. Ostentatious, fully in your face. You see any of these old movies with dictators, despots, heads of state, all drove these cars. It was also called the billion-dollar car on account of the time and money spent in its development. In its time, it was the most refined and luxurious saloon money could buy. And over a 7-year lifespan, nearly 500,000 of these W140s were sold. So innovations on the W140, ESP debuted here, brake assist, Parktronic, whole bunch of safety features. Still a cassette player, but now a Mercedes branded cassette player. Digital climate control, lots of buttons, like a forest of buttons. This button to drop the rear headrest so you can see better out of the rear view mirror, an automatic day-night view mirror. You get a sunroof, everything electronic over here. A very cool feature in the days before a rear parking camera, no screens over here as you can see. There are these two sticks that extend from the boot, and that points out where the edges of the boot are when you reverse the car. This also debuted side airbags for the first time, but all that pales into comparison with what this car represented. Status, power, governmental power, head of state power. This particular car, this is the 500 SEL 5-liter V8 engine. It debuted 4-valve heads, first time on this car, made 326 bhp, 450 Newton meters or 480 Newton meters of torque. But because of the 4-valve head, better in terms of performance, also efficiency, and also smoother. You know, every generation it becomes quieter and quieter. Now you really have to step on the engine to actually hear it. Let's do that. You can hear it. And it moves. Also made it to a new 5-speed automatic transmission. You can hear that growl of the engine. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This car had massive dimensions. It was a rolling sculpture, like stamped out of one block of metal. Classic Mercedes, that boxy styling that everybody associates Mercedes-Benz with. The same kind of template also went down to the 124 that we all love and know of so well. Now, why is it so silent in here? It got double glazed glass for soundproofing and insulation. That is why it's so quiet, and obviously the engine also must have got quieter. You know, one thing I didn't talk about in the 126, it got a passenger side airbag, but to fit that airbag, it had to eat into the entire passenger, the glove box space. But here on the 140, it has a little glove box and another space up here. The cabin got handcrafted wood trim, thick leather, and high quality fit and finish. The rear seat also got recline and memory functions. Of course, the seats were heated. Optionally, you could also get massage, and some even got an on-board telephone. This was the 90s after all. These seats, opulence to another level. It's soft, you sink into it, really high quality leather. The best amongst all the generations of the S-Class I've driven up till now. So supportive, so comfortable. Well, maybe not supportive, but so soft you sink into it. And to add to the comfort, there's hydraulic self-leveling suspension with optional adaptive damping. And it needed it because the W140 was Mercedes' heaviest car ever at launch. Over 2.2 tons, of which 60 kilos was just sound insulation. And then came the Daimler Chrysler era, where budgets were slashed, engineers couldn't do anything and everything and take forever to do whatever they wanted. And then that resulted in the W220, the S-Class that came to India. The 140 was drawn with rulers, all straight lines. The 220, well, it had these soft forms, this characteristic triple lens headlamp in this trapezoidal shape, and this was a massive departure for everything that went before for the S-Class. Similar in terms of size, but 30% lighter. Less in your face, less ostentatious, and this came from the Daimler Chrysler era. And that meant this wasn't really the highlight of the S-Class generations, but this is a highlight for India because this was the first S-Class to be assembled in India. The key changed with the W220, still not keyless, but smaller key. And you fire it up and you can barely hear it. Here we go. The car that was built in India. The W220 was the first S-Class to be assembled in India. For India, it was a huge step up. The E-Class had settled down and now that got the S-Class. The C-Class would actually come later. The W220 was the first S-Class that I actually drove. This marked a radical departure for anything that Mercedes-Benz had done with the S-Class. When the 220 came out, the quality was no patch on the S-Classes that had gone before it. The bodies were rusting prematurely, lot of issues, which then they obviously sorted out, but the initial reputation of this car wasn't anywhere like the W140, and that's why dictators continued to use the older S-Class. Also, in terms of the interiors now, just look at it. It's got lots of wood, plaster wood. This debuted the half wood, half leather steering wheel of Mercedes-Benz's, which they carried on for so long that afterwards we started saying that these are all uncle cars, and finally they knocked off the wood on the steering wheel. It took them decades to sort that out, but the first car to have this half wood on the steering wheel was the 220. A screen, for the first time on a car, a screen. Command system, Mercedes' command system to navigate on the screen, that came about on this car. It also debuted Distronic, it debuted active body control. In fact, active body control was supposed to come on the 140 series, but it took so long to develop that it finally got introduced on the 220. And the safety tech included front, side and curtain airbags, lane keeping assist, rain sensing wipers. Even Distronic adaptive cruise control was a groundbreaking safety feature that set the stage for modern driver assistance tech of today. Now, in terms of the driving, wow, this is plush. The seats, you don't sink into it like in the 140. It's more supportive, and I'm sure that over a longer drive, this is going to be better. Climate control. This is like now what modern cars look and feel like. This is the S350. If I remember right, the S320 came to India. This V6, even the one that came to India was a V6, but this V6 is a 3.7 litre V6, around 350 bhp, top speed of 241 kilometers per hour, not 250 kilometers per hour. But because it was 30% lighter than the outgoing S-Class, it moved so much better. Also debuted the 7G Tronic automatic transmission, 5 speeds on the W140. The 220 also debuted Airmatic suspension, this button out here, and you get Sport Mode 1, Sport Mode 2 and Comfort. Put into Sport 2, probably like Sport Plus. This one is the 4MATIC, again debuted on the S-Class, 4-wheel drive. India, no need for 4-wheel drive, so the 4-wheel drives never came in. This one doesn't have the best reputation of all the S-Classes because of those early initial quality issues. It's also not the most popular S-Class. But in terms of engineering, in terms of the advancements, in terms of technology, well, the S-Class did what all S-Classes need to do, ought to do, and have always done. Move the needle. And then from here, all of it went to the other cars. I remember pre-safe. Yep, pre-safe also, all of that came over here. So stuff like the seat belts holding you back, the brake discs, wiping the brake discs when it gets damp or wet. All that pre-safe stuff also came over here on this S-Class. And I remember you could load in CDs and you would get navigation out here. Old school navigation now, Google Maps, that's why this phone is stuck over there. Telephone, this is your keypad for the telephone. That was also built into the car. And now from the 220, we go to the 221, which moved away from these kind of very soft, curvy forms to a more sharper design language. More in keeping with the prestige, the power, the opulence, and everything that the S-Class needs to convey. 8 years after the 220 came the 221 in 2005, and it marked a big step in terms of tech, in terms of luxury, in terms of sophistication, and in terms of looking like $1 million. Gone were all these soft curves, and in came sharper lines, in came a styling, a look that screamed money. real proper money. And also this took Mercedes-Benz into the 21st century in terms of all the technical innovations packaged onto this car. When launched, the W221 had the highest level of passive safety of any car in the world. There was night view assist, one of the first night vision systems in a production car that used infrared cameras to detect pedestrians or animals beyond headlight range. Pre-Safe Plus enhanced crash prevention. Adaptive high beam assist ensured you didn't blind the cars coming at you. There was advanced Distronic Plus radar-based cruise control with brake assist. With the 221 generation of the S-Class, the column-mounted gear stalk that made an appearance. So this is here. Over here, the armrest or the palm rest, you have the keypad for the telephone. Also, they did things a little bit more sensibly back then, because to lift the suspension, you don't have to go into all the different menus. The button is right out here. One touch and you can lift the suspension. So it also has a lot of interesting and well thought out things on this car. It also has this pregnant bulge on the dash. And of course, the engines got better, you had more power, you had better luxury. And as I'm going around this corner, I can feel the side bolsters that inflating, holding me in place. This generation, the 221, this was the archetype for the modern day luxury limousine. The cabin became ultra luxurious with soft touch materials, ambient lighting and advanced ergonomics. Massaging seats appeared with multiple settings. There was rear seat entertainment, 4-zone climate control, optional Burmester surround sound and the option of a panoramic sunroof. Still had that half wood steering wheel, but in a darker shade of wood. Didn't look that uncle. Darker woods out here, but of course woods were a big deal in all these luxury cars. This is the twin-turbo V8, makes 450 bhp, 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, 250 kilometers per hour top speed, and this is not the AMG. So obviously power kept going up. You got to motor down the autobahns at full pelt in your luxury automobile. And here, in fact, the engine is barely audible. What you can hear more of is the AC blowers. It became that silent, that quiet, and that luxurious. Every generation of the S-Class makes a massive step up in terms of ride comfort, in terms of luxury, in terms of isolating you from the road. I remember when I drove this, the 222 generation of the S-Class, I was shocked by the ride comfort, and that was because this had magic body control. It didn't come to India when it was launched because there was a lot of issue around radar spectrums. This has got stereo cameras that reads the road surface. When it sees a bump, it sees a pothole, it adjusts the suspension accordingly so that it can flatten that out. That was the first time something like this we had ever seen on an automobile, and it took comfort to another level. The W222 lasted till the end of 2020, and when we emerged from the lockdowns, we got the W223, the 7th and current generation of the S-Class, one that reinforced its claim on the best car in the world title, and one that forced me into wearing a jacket in a car review. Gen 1 S-Class 116 ABS, Gen 2 S-Class, the 126 driver and passenger side airbag, W140, it had side airbags. A lot of these were made into bulletproof cars, the head of state car. The 220, the car that came to India, the first S-Class to be assembled in India, active body control. The 221, magic body control. The 222, the 222, this had Car2X. And then of course the 223 that debuts Drive Pilot. Now on the German autobahns, you can set Drive Pilot. You have a car or a truck or something in front, not in the fast lane but in the slow lane, and you can set the Drive Pilot and this will drive itself autonomously. You can legally watch YouTube videos, read a paper, play around with your phone, look at Instagram. This will drive itself. And that just shows with every generation of the S-Class, it takes safety, it takes comfort, it takes luxury, it takes ostentatiousness up a notch. This has always been the best car in the world, and it continues to be the best car in the world. But which is your favorite generation of the S-Class? Let us know in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this episode of Gone But Not Forgotten, make sure you subscribe to the channel, stay tuned for all our video drops, hit that bell icon, and of course give us a shout out and fire away in the comments.